Hi, and welcome to the Behavioral Business Blueprint, where we dive into the world of behavioral health entrepreneurship. We have a special guest with us. This guest is actually making history for this show. He's our first guest on the show, helping in the behavioral health world with technology to help kids and adults with autism. Today, I have the founder of First Word, Patrick Faga. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Arthur, for that wonderful introduction. It's absolutely great to be here. I've been keeping up with the pod, and it's really great to be here and get to talk about something in the tech world instead of something in kind of the traditional behavioral health business world. So I think it'll be a fun conversation.
Yes, and this is something that I've been wanting to do just to learn more outside just the behavioral health world. I want to know like technology that people are using because technology makes things so much easier. And we could talk a little bit later about the Viking funeral that you did for which you do, which I love that saw it on LinkedIn. But my first question I always ask everybody that comes on here is become like a key question is when do you sleep? I mean, you're a business owner.
I find a decent amount of time. I do prioritize sleep because I think that it's really important to just kind of be productive. So I think that obviously there's kind of the facetious and non-facetious interpretation of that question, and at least in the kind of classical sense, I do manage to get a decent amount of sleep, but it is really tricky to balance everything when you're running a business. There's no real distinction between when you're on or offline, and especially when emails are coming in. And right now we're doing our beta launch, so we have a lot of communication with folks in the industry about just kind of their experience with the app and any issues they might be having. So it is definitely challenging to find a lot of time to kind of just totally separate from work, but I really enjoy what I do, so it isn't much of a bother.
That's always a motivator when you love what you do. First, you own First Work. What is First Work for those that don't know what it is?
Yeah, so First Work is a learning application which digitizes DTT lessons for professionals. The really unique thing about the way that we've digitized DTT, which is discrete trial training for anyone who isn't familiar, is that we've actually digitized it all the way from customization through reinforcement. So there have been systems out there that have done some component of what we're doing, whether it be kind of providing digital resources, so you have some images that you could use, or having a game that could kind of be a fun reinforcer for learning. But there really hasn't been that holistic connection of everything from having access to all of the resources that you need, being able to deeply customize those, and then being able to deliver those lessons in a digital environment that really is conducive to learning and provides that reinforcement component. And to double click on the reinforcement bit, the really interesting thing that we've done with our app is that we reinforce and reward kids with time on their favorite applications as a reward for learning work they do. So you could, for instance, answer a couple questions and then earn 2 minutes on YouTube. The benefit of using a system like this, where you can earn time on things that you already enjoy, is that, of course, there are people who have spent lots and lots of time and effort creating these incredible entertainment experiences for kids. And as people who make educational technology, it's very hard to compete with that. We're not going to make a AAA game that's going to be, super fun, or the best YouTube video anyone's ever made, or Baby Shark. So you can kind of leverage some of those things that already exist that kids really love, as something to motivate them to get involved in these learning experiences.
So this takes away the need of paper. No
It
more
does take
paper.
it does. That is really the pragmatic element of what we do. I think that in technology, there's kind of two components. There's the pragmatic component, where you're doing something that simply needs to be done. I think in this space, EHR technologies are kind of serving that role a lot of the time, where if you don't have a nice place to house your data and organize it, it's very hard to do your work as a ABA business that's sort of important to what you do. And so I think the pen and paper component is really the pragmatic component of our application, where folks are just spending a lot of time and money on these resources that you could just have a digital version and it's much less expensive. And then the aspirational component of our business and the component of our technology is really this screen time reinforcement component that is kind of bringing in something entirely different, that can really open up new avenues that folks might not have even traditionally conceptualized.
So is your background in technology? Is that how you got into this?
Kind of, sort of. So I have a pretty interesting, or probably the wrong word. I have a sort of all over the place background. I got started in the general field after I graduated from undergrad in behavioral neuroscience. So I have that kind of science background. And in behavioral neuroscience, we think a lot about systems, and there is some technology involved. But I don't have a formal technology background. That's actually my co-founder Thaddeus, who does a lot of the technology work. I have more exposure to the behavioral side of the world. So I did behavioral neuroscience. Then I worked in ABA as a technician for a while, and I also have a graduate degree in behavioral science from the University of Pennsylvania, which is where I got most focused on technology. Because in that space, we were thinking a lot about gamification and just sort of ways that we can improve systems. And I think systems lend themselves very nicely to technological solutions. So that's sort of where I ended up, but wasn't necessarily where I had charted my course from the very beginning.
That's kind of how it always is. You just find something
Yeah.
you're passionate about, and then you just go with it. But I love that you said you have, a co-founder. And how does that work? Like your partnership with each other. And how did you guys even meet to say, "Hey, let's come together"? Because that's very hard to have a partnership with anybody.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the fortunate thing about Thaddeus and I is that we've been really close friends for a very long time. We actually met as freshmen at the University of San Diego, just as friends, and have been friends for years and years since. And our relationship has always sort of evolved along these lines in sort of a funny way, even though we didn't really see it at the time. Where he is a computer scientist, he's a very techie guy, and I've always been very interested in technology, but that's not where my expertise lies. So he was always the person who I was having those fun conversations with about the interesting technological innovations that were going on and what he was working on and kind of what really happens in the technology world. And then on my side, I was more interested in sort of the humanities and things that were kind of in that behavioral realm and science and all sorts of things that were not what he was focused on. So we've really always had this very interesting dialogue and kind of connection point over the intersection between technology and things that really kind of improve people's lives and can make a big difference in the world. And we both have a connection to autism. So when I started doing this work and was kind of explaining what I was working on, he was the first person I called actually to be like, "Hey, is this even possible?" It's an interesting concept, but the restricting fun apps and earning time on them, it's not something that I was sure was even feasible. So he was the first person I talked to, and months later he was able to join the team, and we've been going strong ever since. So it's been really fortunate that we've had that ongoing relationship, and this is sort of just an evolution of that, but not something that's he's not just like a random person to me. So
Okay.
I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, and I didn't even realize you're from California. I don't know why I thought DC or someplace on
I
the East
actually
Coast.
you actually have it correct. I am from DC, and then I went to undergraduate in San Diego, so I have a little bit of that West Coast connection
Oh,
there, but I
okay.
am from the
No, I meet so many people. It seems
area.
on the West Coast, and I'm like, it's something out there. I don't know, just something special that's going on. I don't know what's in the water out there. Maybe it's the high cost of living that just say, "Hey, I got to get this together. I got to come up with something to kind of change the world
No,
to
that might
survive out here."
that might be it. It's just necessity. No, that's funny.
Yeah. So you have the background in the neuroscience, and a lot of times when I see a lot of stuff come out, it's always for kids. But is this something that you can also see adults using as well? Have you reached out to maybe any adult day facilities by chance?
Yeah, we actually have. So there are some folks who are working in the adult kind of day setting that have been using the application. It wasn't something that we had sort of initially conceptualized. The way that we're planning to increase the usability of the application is really by expanding our content. So right now, our learning content is focused on goals like matching, receptive identification, counting, spelling, things like this. So typically kind of focused on that early learning population. But of course, these goals are goals that are pertinent to a lot of people, sometimes folks who are even older, than kind of the young learning population where these goals often start. So we have been seeing uses in that context. And I think that especially as we start to build out things like social skills and life skills, it could be something that I think could have an even bigger impact there where we can focus on goals that are a little bit more pertinent to that population, where sometimes the focus is a little bit less on things that are academic, which is kind of where we currently are.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it's the world is wide open. I
Yep.
could definitely. There's a conference going on now as we record, Autism Investors Summit. I can definitely see you there talking about this because this is not something that's just widely known. Luckily, I found you through LinkedIn,
Yep.
but so many more people out there that could use this that just don't know, especially a lot of parents and other, companies coming along. So I can imagine. I know you've been reaching out to everybody, and I hope they're reaching out to First Work as well. And we'll definitely post the link in there. But let me just, what was the inspiration behind this? Was it something maybe was it a family member or just your work experience that you just saw that, hey, this is something I think that could be, successful or something that we need to try?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So I think it's a combination of things. I think a lot of the time it's you know ideas just I think happen like that where they sort of percolate, and there might be 100 things that kind of led to you having a thought. But I think the most central thing that I experienced that kind of made me really passionate about this was from my work in ABA. So I was working as a technician. It was actually COVID, so just all sorts of stuff going on, and folks are stuck in the house. And I was working with this one learner who was, a little bit older, had a lot of skills, and so we would communicate a lot. And one day I was there at dinner time, and I'd never been there at dinner time before. And this learner was, or typically very, easygoing, and everything was very kind of smooth around the house. But dinner time was this just cacophony. It was a totally different thing than I'd ever seen before. And the main reason for it was that these parents, wanted to have their child eating these healthy foods, and this person just was not interested in doing that for the most part. And it was mostly because they didn't like new things, and less. It wasn't really a sensory issue from what we could tell. And so I saw this dinner dynamic, and it was just not something that really felt like it needed to be this way. And so I asked if it was something they were interested in, and I talked to my BCBA, and so we worked in some new goals about trying out some new foods during our sessions. And there was really limited success to begin with, but I had this insight that this learner liked two things a lot. He liked Legos and also liked video games, and we had tried kind of all the traditional reinforcers that were things that we normally like to rely on, things like playing Legos. And that really was not moving the needle very much. But one time before dinner, I said, not going to tell anybody about this, but if you are up to try some of these vegetables here, we can do like 5-10 minutes, playing Mario Kart. And it was like a flip switch. I'd never seen anything like it before. This learner was was eating these vegetables and kind of realizing that it actually wasn't something that they were even that averse to. It's just something they hadn't really tried. And we were right on the couch, playing the video games. And by the end of the week, this learner was actually asking to play video games with the hopes that there might be, or to eat some broccoli rather, with the hopes that we might be able to earn some video games as a result. And I just never seen that level of motivation in this learner. And I kind of noticed that across a lot of the other learners I work with, there was a similar kind of dynamic where screen time was this kind of holy pantheon up there that really beat out everything else that kids had access to. And it felt like it wasn't something that was really being systematically thought of that way. It was something that was often being avoided, and it just wasn't very well situated into people's lives. So realizing that it was something that could have this motivational power to get kids to try things and really focus on things that they should be doing, just felt like a much better way to situate this thing, which was otherwise very difficult to kind of place into your home. Because as we've all seen, it's possible, very easy, frankly, for bad habits to develop around screen time. And so, given that it was something that was often actually causing a negative impact, and could have this really positive impact on kids by being just kind of placed in a slightly different temporal order into their day, it just felt like something that I really wanted to see what was behind. And we've heard some really amazing stories since the app's been launched about kids having those kind of experiences that I was hoping they might have, where there was a little bit of motivational difficulty, or the experience they were having on the physical flashcards just wasn't as engaging as it could have been. And by making the experience a bit more engaging and then really leveraging something that kids care about, we've been hearing these wonderful stories about kids being able to really focus more than they had and engage more with their BCBAs. So it's been really exciting to see.
Well, that's good to hear. Personal experience, you saw the need, and that's definitely a huge need that you're feeling. And again, so just imagine the Viking funeral. You're just pushing out all the paper. It's going out to sea because now everything's digital, and that's what a lot of kids, look towards. And we'll talk offline. I can tell you my experience with tablets,
Yeah.
the kids we have. But before we close, I do want to ask. You go through ups and downs in entrepreneurship, and I just want to ask, what gets you through those hard times, especially dealing with technology?
I think for me, a lot of it is kind of separating the day-to-day struggles and things that come up. And, as things come up all the time. There's, never really a straight path to get where you need to go, but there is a path. And I think for me, it's just kind of focusing on the holistic impact that, this could be having. I don't think I'd be able to, be as committed to what I was doing if I was, making an NFT or, something that might not have a really positive impact on people's lives. But, especially getting to hear this feedback and, see that this is just saving folks a lot of time. And, whether it's a BCBA saying that they got to spend a little bit more time with their partner this weekend because they weren't laminating cards and hanging out on Canva, finding
Oh,
images,
yes.
or it's a parent saying that, they've had this issue with screen time and now that it feels like much better in their house and they're providing continued learning opportunities, or those stories about learners, kind of having these breakthroughs. Those are really the things that keep me going, when things are more challenging, because ultimately it's not just about, some ephemeral goal. It's, people's real lives and something that can really help them. So knowing that if you go that extra mile and are able to get something done, it might really have an impact in somebody's life, I think is an important part for me.
Well, you guys are listening to Patrick Faga, one of the founders of First Work. So, Patrick, where can people reach out to you if they're interested in learning more?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're very present on LinkedIn, as Arthur mentioned. We sometimes have some pretty fun stuff going on there, like our Viking funeral for the laminating machine to sort of celebrate our launch. So you can always find me on LinkedIn. Our website is also www.firstworkapp.com if you'd like to check it out. We have all sorts of videos and kind of content about the app so you can get a better sense of how it works. And right now, actually, until April 22nd, our app is still in beta. So if you wanted to try it out, you're able to just go download it for free through our website. So definitely recommend you give that a look if you're interested in digitizing your DTT lessons.
All right, you guys, we'll see you next time for another episode of the Business of Behavioral Health.